I'm just going to kind of go through the Life Beyond degree, talk to our alumni panelists, give them a chance to kind of tell their stories. But as we do before and we get it to the panelist portion of the event, we always take some time and talk about career success and how we can help you out, and some of the resources that we have and some of the things that we really focus in on and hone in on to help you with that journey. But as always, if you need any accommodations, please just let me know, just reach out. I'm pretty multi-talented. I can get to the chat. So if you do need anything, just let me know and I will make sure that I accommodate as best as possible. So today's event, or tonight's event, is the Humanities Scholars Resume Building Beyond the Classroom Experience. So I'm going to focus on things that you can do now that's going to shape your experience after your degree, but just how you can shape some of those experiences, just outside of the classroom. So just want to make sure that you can do that. And then my name, again, I said my name is Mark. I'm a career coach. I've been working in the office, so if I'm not familiar, I'm assuming to most of the Humanities Scholars alumni, I'm not familiar to you. I started in this office right at the start of COVID, which is a wild time to start working in any office. But so I've actually never met any of my team members face to face. So it's been a really, really interesting start to my time in this office. But I've actually been at Ohio State for 6 years now. I've worked in the undergraduate admissions realm before this, in a little subsection called Academic Relations and Competitive Admissions, and spent some time in the registrar's office, and then moved over to ASC in March of last year. So that's just a little bit about me, so you have an understanding of maybe where I've been. And then before I was at OSU, I was actually in higher ed for 6 years prior to that, working at Florida Gulf Coast and a couple of for-profit schools in Pittsburgh. And so if you do need to email me, I will drop my email in the chat once we are done, just in case you do want to follow up or catch up on anything. But there's my email address. And then I'm trying to be better at using my Twitter handle for ASC career success stuff, which I'm not really that good at, but I'm trying to be better, make a cognizant effort to use that. But that's me. And I'll let Ben introduce himself next.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. My name is Ben Fortman. I am the Humanities Scholars Program Manager. I have been in this position since 2009, the slide says, and had to remind myself. So we're happy to have some outstanding Humanities Scholars alumni with us today to share their sort of OSU experience and kind of give you all current students some tips and suggestions for how you can make the best of that, and then hear a little bit about what they're up to now. So thanks for joining us, everyone.
All right, so we will just keep it moving here. So as I'm going to jump into the career success portion of the event, of the presentation, but something that our office will always talk about, and if you see any career success PowerPoints, presentations, classroom events, we always, I would say probably always start with talking about readiness competencies. And readiness competencies are a list of attributes or skills that employers are actively looking from their applicants or employees. And so this was founded by NACE, which is the National Association of Colleges and Employers, and they work with companies on their recruiting efforts and their strategies. And this is what they found that employers are looking for. So we have a list of 10, and they've added some new ones just in a short time. Diversity, embrace diversity, and make contributions, or something that were kind of added a little bit later. And those are the ones that we started working with just more recently. So we've had to update a lot of our information, but it makes sense that that NACE would see that this is something that's becoming more prevalent, or just more on the forefront of what companies are seeking from their candidates. And so what I challenge students to do is, when they're working on their resumes and they think about maybe putting those like retail jobs or those fast food type jobs, I challenge you to go back to those actual jobs and reconsider putting those on your resume, because they may, and a lot, and I want the students to put them on there because they contain some of those transferable skills that students don't think mean anything. But if we look at what NACE is telling us, strong communication skills, communicate effectively. And when you start to peel back a layer of what that all entails, it's oral and verbal, written, any type of communication. So if you were in one of those fast food jobs and you had to work with, customers at, the front line of a McDonald's, you had to really sharpen your communication skills because you had to work in a short amount of time, get your point across, work with maybe like unhappy customers. And so I think there's just a lot of transferable skills that's in that job that you may not think about, that's kind of under the surface. Even working in a teamwork dynamic, same idea. Maybe you worked in a retail setting and you had to work with other people, and you had to, clean up rooms or spend time folding up rooms of clothes, but you had to do it with a team dynamic in mind. And so that's when you start peeling back the layers of what these competencies actually are, but making sure that you are reading more into that and figuring out how you can plop these competencies into your resume. And so it's definitely something that is important, but also we want to kind of get you thinking about, because it's easy to maybe miss putting those jobs on your application or on your resume because you don't think they're that important, but they actually are. Some easy ways, excuse me, some easy ways to get some experience to build the competencies is looking into a part-time job. If your major has a capstone course or an internship component, that's another easy way. Even if your major does not require an internship, we through the College of Arts and Sciences, we have an actual internship that goes to our office, to where you can get credit if you needed, if you still wanted to do an internship and you wanted to get credit for it. We have that course available to students. So that's still something that you could do. There's always ways to volunteer. Every organization under the sun will take volunteers to do something. And so there are plenty of opportunities like that, especially if you're being strategic about it, making sure that you're trying to volunteer in a maybe say like industry that is relevant to where you see yourself once your college experience is over. And then with OSU having over 1,000 clubs and organizations, there's always an opportunity to be a leader in that, and that would definitely be kind of checking off one of the bullet points here of taking the lead. That would show that you could take some initiative and be inside of a leadership core of a group or organization. And so there are plenty of ways to kind of to take what you're doing now, and even if you're not doing it, it's good to start thinking about it, of how you can maybe get to where you want to go. When we talk about the attributes, again, this is the readiness competencies from NACE. This is just showing you 80%, 82% of the respondents said the problem solving skills was an attribute that they really wanted to see. And this just kind of shows you, from the top down of what they're looking for. I'm really interested in the flexibility and adaptability. I'm surprised that's as low as it is, because I've been especially working in higher ed, and I'm sure Rachel, you can speak to this too, but working in higher ed, you just have to adapt on the fly. Just because things are one way this year does not mean for sure that they're going to be that way next year. And that's for a lot of industries, but just being adaptable and being flexible. I know when I started in higher ed, I probably wouldn't count this as one of my characteristics or strong traits, but over time it's worn me down enough to where I'm very flexible now, and I was one of those people who had a hard time just kind of letting go of the old ways, but I'm just very much more flexible these days, and more easy come, easy go kind of mindset. So you'll see that with any industry that you get in, you may adapt your personality and your traits to kind of what's going on inside of that industry. But those are the things that just kind of happen as you go along. But all of these attributes that are just on the slide are really, really important. So if you could think about what you may be good at, that's great. But I also want you to maybe focus in on what you're maybe missing and work on those things, because again, this is what we're seeing as being traits that companies or organizations want. So This is just the readiness competencies broken down just a little bit more. While we're kind of going on our journey today, I will drop a link in the chat that will link you back to our website, and it will list all of the information about the competencies. But this is just going a little bit more in depth. So I'll spare you all from reading the slide word for word, but these are just some ways that you could strengthen some of your competencies. So if you are asking like what's applying logic, what does that mean? So the best way to think about it is to offer to assist somebody with some brainstorming solution. A lot of times we go through these brainstorming activities at work to where we're trying to solve a problem. We get everybody in the room together. We all kind of throw some things off the wall and see what sticks, what looks good, and then maybe go through some step-by-step issues that we may see that could come up or pop up during the solution phase. But if you're trying to think of how you can do that, maybe asking to get some real world, some hands-on experience within a club or organization that you already belong to. Once you start doing that, then it starts to make sense, and you start to be a little bit more comfortable. For any of these competencies, the more comfortable you can get, the better you're going to be. So it takes a little bit of practice. It's kind of like anything, but the more that you can practice on those, the easier it's going to be to see those through. And still, just like some other ways for the rest of the competencies, owning your career. Obviously, you meet up with a career coach, start to talk about your next steps. Where is your resume at? What does that look like? What does a cover letter look like? Have you even written a cover letter? Where are you applying for jobs? How active are you on Handshake? Do you have a LinkedIn profile made? Well, we kind of run through the gamut of all of those, career-focused activities that you should be doing or could be doing to get ready to kind of make that transition from being a student to a professional. So making sure that you are owning your own career and jumping in and getting all the help you can get, because I'd be willing to bet, I'd love to maybe ask the panelists, but how many of them actually took advantage of career success? And not every student does, and that's okay. Not every student needs it, but typically for the ones that do, they need some help, and they might have a little bit of a head start on everything as they get started to make that journey into their professional career. So if you're looking for some resume builders, a lot of times when I see students who are just getting started on their resume and it's a little bit light, they're looking for those opportunities, and they're trying to start to make an impact on their resume, in a very positive fashion. The first thing I would look for start to think about is, how can you get some resume builders on that resume? How can you get some resume builders moving and going in line? And so if you're looking for external sites, so if you're looking for a resume builder, you're looking for a job, an internship, anything that can add to what you want to do or the field that you want to go into. If you're looking to stay in Ohio means jobs is a great place to start looking for internships and jobs. Indeed is a huge, nationwide, it might even be like worldwide search. And then if you need to whittle this down for your career specifically, on our website, we're broken down into career communities, and career communities are just based off of an industry. So I oversee a career community for marketing, advertising, and PR, and then another community for sports, journalism, entertainment production. And those are not set up by majors. Those are more just of the student's interests and what you want to go into and where you see yourself. And so on all of our pages under the career communities sections, we have some of what we call like our favorite sites, and those are industry specific. So I was just looking at one today with a student who wanted to maybe get into like broadcasting, and under the journalism, sports, entertainment, production career community, we have things that like Ohio broadcasting jobs and media type jobs. And we've actually found some sites out there that are very, very focused on that industry. And so, looking at the big ones, the Indeeds of the world are great, but then we start to kind of narrow that funnel down a little bit just to make it a little bit of a more career focused search. So it's not a bad thing to look at the bigger sites, because all of those sites have filters to where you can, whittle that search down. But there are sometimes some good, some good perks of looking at the smaller, like, industry specific sites. And then I love LinkedIn. I talked about LinkedIn. I should be a paid spokesman for LinkedIn because of how much I enjoy it. I legitimately use LinkedIn to leverage my job at Ohio State. I was working at a school in Florida. I didn't know anybody in Columbus. My wife went to Ohio State. She's an alum, and she wanted to move back to this area. And so I just started networking, and I just started using it and made some connections. Actually, it was a connection of one of my college friends, and used that connection, and a little bit of hard work, a little bit of catching lightning in a bottle, and it ended up working itself out. But it was some of the hard work I did on LinkedIn, making those connections and staying up to date on some, of my old relationships. But if you want to use it, and if you use it the right way, it can definitely, pay off in the right way. But LinkedIn is amazing. It's a great place to network. For some reason, students are a little shy to use LinkedIn for its networking, for its networking capabilities. But I'm baffled by that. I'm always baffled by that, because they're not afraid to put something on Snapchat that goes to hundreds of thousands of people, but you're afraid to try to network with somebody that can help you get your first job. Doesn't make any sense to me. Today, I had a student really sunk into them, and it didn't make any sense either. And so she was going to get over that fear today. I know she's going to be better at it. She's going to use LinkedIn to network a little bit more. But if you are shy about using it to network, and you think it's weird and you're unsure of doing it, don't think it's weird. It's a professional networking platform. That's what it's there for. That's what it was built for. And so don't be shy on it. Reach out to people and network. Tell people your story and see if they can help you make some connections in your given field or industry or whatever you want to get into. But that's legitimately why they made the site. So don't be shy about it. Alumni Fire is really, really cool. People have unreal things to say about it. I did a presentation with another group of students last week. It was just a club on campus, and I've never heard a student talk about it like this one student in particular did. He loved it. He said the connections he's made on there have been unreal, and they've been so giving. And so that was just great, to just like a nice positive reinforcement to hear that students are using it. But Alumni Fire is set up to where if you are an alumnus, you can go on there, and it's just a way for you to give back to the university and help out students. Now, the good thing is if students think this is a little strange, or it's not really going to work, well, these alumni have made a concerted effort to be on this site for a reason and to be a part of this platform. So they want to help you. They're looking to, maybe help give students their first chance in whatever field they're looking into or whatever kind of job. But Alumni Fire is a great place to go in and explore a little bit, just to kind of see what's out there. And I never opened up a profile of my own, but I just started one last week. And so I'm just getting the hang of it. So if you get in there and it looks overwhelming, don't worry about it. It felt that way for me too. So I'm just getting acclimated to it. It's taking me a little bit of time. So as a student, if you get in there and it looks crazy and it's scary, just know that you're in similar company, because I felt the same way. So I'm just getting my bearings. And so, but give it some time, connect with people just the same way you would connect on LinkedIn. Don't be shy. That's really what it's set up for. It's to make those connections that you normally wouldn't be able to. So these are two great places to go in and do some social networking. On campus, right now it's just such a bizarre time. Nothing that we're doing is really in person. Everything's virtual. So our office is still trying to push through and host the internship fairs and career fairs and things like that. It's as good as it can be with it being virtual. So it's a little bit different than what we're used to, but if you have an opportunity to go, I would still recommend going to anything that we have upcoming. Or if you do see an opportunity from maybe another like external resource, where you can go to a career fair, it's still worth going and making connections and telling people your story and getting your resume in front of people. So even though we're not in person and we're not having big functions, just do the best you can and kind of just weather the storm and do as much as you can in this current situation. Any off-campus networking you can do, reach out to family and friends. When I was getting my start, when I was just starting my career, I leveraged family and friends a lot to see if somebody knew somebody that could help me get a start to where I wanted to start working. And those things do work out. They will pan out. Just takes a little bit of time. But use those networks. I mean, everybody knows somebody. See if you can go to company open houses. So with LinkedIn, you can always see kind of what a company is up to and what they're doing. Don't hesitate to maybe see if you can go to a virtual open house. Again, most companies are just adapting to this virtual environment right now. There's young professional networks. Any city or state you're in, they'll probably have a YP organization. So those are great places to go just to get your name out there, network a little bit in your community, in your area. But that's something very, very easy to do. I've been a part of a YP network down in Florida, met unreal people, really, really cool, high achieving individuals. So those are a lot of fun to do too. So those are just a couple of ideas. If you are, kind of still continuing to search and you're looking for some other ideas, making a pitch to employers. I think it's pretty interesting, but this is kind of like cold calling to see if you may be if you may be able to kind of force your way in the door a little bit, maybe a little aggressive for a lot of people. I feel like maybe like a seasoned professional might want to do this, but it seems a little bit aggressive to me. But just see how you can get yourself out there. Reaching out, I think being courageous enough to shoot those messages out through maybe like a LinkedIn. Always, if you make a connection with anybody on LinkedIn, I always recommend sending the note along with it so that people know why you're trying to reach out. But just trying to network any way you can is going to help you in the long run. Definitely doing some research. Research a couple of things. When I think about research, I definitely want to research the company that you may be looking into. So maybe you want to get into an industry and you only want to work for, let's say JP Morgan Chase. Like you love them, you love kind of, some people who work for them, and you just think it seems like a really, really cool company. Spend some time researching the company on your own. Don't just take it for word of mouth, because somebody could be working in a totally different area than you, and it just may be a different setup, and it may be a whole different environment that you may be in. So spending some time researching companies and getting to know what they're all about. Do they have do they believe in the same things that you believe in, that are near and dear to your heart? What is what's their diversity background? What's their company makeup? Like, who's running their company? You can always do a little bit of research on a company, and it's actually very, very easy these days. So spend some time doing that. And then another thing to research is like the industry that you want to get into, and then the type of positions that you're thinking about. The more that you research, you may get a chance to see like what a typical day is like. And maybe you're like, oh, I don't want to work in an office setting, and I want to be able to work totally remotely, or I want to be able to work from home. But maybe that industry or that job itself does not really allow for that flexibility too much. And so that may make you change your mind a little bit. So spending some time in researching that job. Another thing that you'll find from that research too is that job may be called multiple things. I know, like doing something like sales, you could be a sales manager, you can be a sales associate, you can be an account executive, but realistically, those are all the same thing, like, depending on the company. But you'll research and you'll find out what that position is called, and you'll see the variation of it, but you'll see that it's maybe the same thing. So that'll also give you some different things to search. So maybe you're doing a search on Indeed, and you're just not getting a hit with a sales manager, but then you put an account executive, and then that rewards you with a lot more hits for those positions. So it's just kept trying to research a little bit of those things. I think are important. Try to make an elevator pitch for yourself. we'll sometimes call it like a personal commercial, but it's just a really short way to pitch yourself. It's going to be a little bit of like a marketing plug for yourself and where you are and where you want to go. But there are some really easy ways to do this. But the more that you can develop your pitch, the more that you can plot it out, the more natural it's going to feel when you're giving it to somebody. Our office like really hammers this home when we're getting ready to have like in-person events, so that if you are networking with somebody and you're just having a quick conversation and they say, tell me about yourself, this is your time to shine. This is the spot where you can talk about yourself in like a minute and hit on all the key points, but really, really come off refined, polished, and really kill it, so that you're making a lasting impression in front of that person. And so if you could work on an elevator pitch, I would definitely avoid doing that, so that you make a very, very positive first impression. So the elements of your pitch should just be your name, the indication of your present status or situation, and an overview of your skills, experiences, and any information that would really benefit that employer that you're speaking to. How you kind of identify with their field or industry, and then a reference to the next step, which is just asking them, like, maybe they might not be the right person that you could talk to. Maybe they are, maybe a manager, but maybe you would need to talk to like somebody in human resources. So maybe asking them how to get in contact with somebody from human resources to learn more about the company or some positions. And so that's just a couple of things that you could do just to get an elevator pitch started. And that's about all I got. So I know I blew through a ton of stuff there, talked a ton about the readiness competencies, but that's something that's pretty important for our office and all the stuff that we stand for and what we're trying to teach. But that is all I got. So before I kind of kick it over to Ben, do any of the students have any questions for me about any of the things I just talked about that has to do with career success? All right, and I have the chat up too, so in case you do, and if you don't want to ask it out loud, that's okay. You just drop it in the chat. All right.
I saw a question, but that was very helpful and like informative, so thank you.
All right, good. Thanks, Grace. Appreciate it. All right. Well, we'll just keep it buzzing along here. I don't think too much.
And Mark, just so everyone knows, when we do eventually get back in person, you're located in Denny Hall. Is that where you'll be, your office?
Yep. We're in Denny. We're on the first floor of Denny. And they moved our offices around a little bit. We have on kind of what I would call the back side of the building. If you actually entered from like the back side, you can walk right into like our suite of offices. I don't think that existed before, but they redid some things, and now if you walk in, it just smacks you in the face, career success. You can't miss it. So we have all kind of offices. So it's a little bit of a change up. Everything's new for me, right? Because I have never been in the office with the group, but it's definitely they went through some changes and developed some offices on the back side of the building.
Great, yeah, and I think they actually moved things around because a lot of the scholars program managers are going to be moving to Denny, so that might be where my office is, and so everybody come on in, see me, and then pop over to Mark. Yeah,
exactly.
I always say it's never too early to start sort of planning for life after OSU. So
no, I think it's definitely not.
Yeah, I think the career or the Center for Career and Professional Success is a fantastic resource, and I definitely encourage everyone to reach out and get started on those things like a resume and practice writing cover letters and just get advice and tips from them. But we're here today with some real life experts who have made it through Ohio State and Humanities Scholars and are out there doing great things. And so we want to hear from them and just learn a little bit about how they got where they are today and what, like Mark mentioned, what sort of involvement and opportunities and things they got from their undergraduate experience how those things helped them make it where they are today. So let's go ahead and hear from you all. So I think what we'll do is I'll just kind of go down my list here and call on you and give us that elevator speech, sort of that how you got where you are, what you're up to now, and then we'll dive deeper here in a few minutes. So Allison, you're on my list first. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you. So yep, my name is Allison Avito. I work as the library liaison and copyright specialist for the Office of Distance Education and E-Learning. So what I do is I work with the OD Office of Online Education and the university libraries to develop library resources for online classes. So I work a lot with information literacy and the subject librarians at OSU to put some of those library skills into online classes.
And what was your major as an undergrad?
Sure, I was a double major in English and history. And prior to working at Ohio State, I worked in a public library for about 4 years.
Great. Andrew, are you out there?
Hello, yes. Hi, so I am Andrew Rosen. You guys can hear me. I'm assuming I unmuted myself. Thanks. I am the Human Resources Manager at Ohio Real Title. So I have been the HR manager for 4 years, so immediately after I graduated from Ohio State in 2017. So my major at Ohio State was in human resources, which is in the Fisher College of Business. However, I have humanities minors in economics, German, and psychology. I had to actually check, I forgot. Yeah, triple minors, totally random. So prior to being in my position, I just had graduated. So I understand that my career path was probably accelerated. Most people don't graduate and go straight to being the manager, but I had interned at my company for 2 years prior. So I had prior experience there.
I think Andrew's being a little modest in his jump to management.
Well, it's more not normal. I don't want to set any expectations that it's normal to graduate and go straight into management. That's all. Normally, there's more of a step ladder to that. I just happen to coincide it with my undergrad. So,
which sort of leads back to what we heard from Mark is sort of all those opportunities that you're gathering can propel you down the road. Nick, welcome. Good to see you. What are you up to today, these days?
Yeah, thank you for having me. So my name is Nick Gilady. I graduated from OSU with a history degree and anthropology degree, and I've been working in automotive industry, primarily with suppliers to Honda. So currently I'm at TS Tech Americas, and I work in the sales department there. And that role is mainly breaking down design data and understanding the parts that will be sold to Honda and pricing those out and presenting those to Honda purchasing, doing some negotiation and getting that approved for sale as Honda's making vehicles.
And did you say your undergraduate major?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
History and anthropology. So I had a dual degree as well.
Great. What kind of Honda do you drive?
Unfortunately, I don't drive a Honda, so I guess that's demerits for me. So I'm sorry.
We won't tell. Great. Well, let's see, Rachel.
Again, I got to find the unmute button. Thanks, Ben. So, hi, I'm Rachel Tuskis. I graduated from Ohio State in 2018. My two majors, I had English with a concentration in creative writing and French. Those were my two majors. My path to my current position involved a year teaching English abroad over in France. I taught middle school and high school age students. And then upon returning, I was on LinkedIn and I found my current position, which is a law admissions counselor. So I work with prospective students. I travel to college fairs. Usually I would visit Ohio State included as well for a graduate school fair. I also host campus visits and interviews for our summer starter program. And I also evaluate applications. So it's a fun time.
Great, excellent. And you're at Ohio Northern right now.
Yep, sure am.
Graham.
Hello, everybody. I'm Graham. So good to see so many familiar faces. Brings back a lot of good memories. So yeah, I graduated from Ohio State in 2019 with a psychology degree. And in my senior year, I was applying to grad schools in clinical psychology, and I got in here at OSU. So then I started that clinical psych PhD program in 2019, and I've been chugging along with that ever since.
Great. Michael.
Yeah, hey everybody. Good afternoon. So my name is Michael Bach. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I proudly serve as the team leader for the Windsor Academy team in City Year. And basically what all that means is I am part of a national education nonprofit called City Year, which is privately and publicly funded as part of the AmeriCorps program, which is a national service organization. I graduated from Ohio State in 2019 with a degree in psychology and went straight into City Year in Columbus. I work in a schoolhouse every day with students. I'm part of a 5th grade classroom, so I get to support them in academics, but also in social emotional learning. And I am also working as the team leader for my team, which basically means I support them in whatever way they need, offer advice, and advocate for them with the organization and also at the school. And I'm happy to be with you all today. It's good to see some familiar faces, like Graham said.
Great. Well, it is great to have you all. As you can see, there are many routes when it comes to life after OSU and finding your career and career path. We'll go ahead and kind of dive deeper into all of your experiences at OSU and beyond. But again, everything is more fun with questions. So current students, don't hold back. If you want to type the questions in the chat, go for it, or just turn on that camera, unmute yourself, and let us have it. I know our panelists are ready to share their experiences. I think what you heard a lot from Mark was sort of about that resume building process. And it's all about gaining experiences and trying new things and making those transferable skills through what you are involved with at OSU. So instead of calling on you one-on-one, I'll just kind of open the floor. If anyone wants to share maybe some of your involvement at OSU when it comes to outside of your academics or scholars, and maybe how that involvement helped you get where you are today.
So a really formative experience for me, both of them actually came from jobs I had as an undergrad. I worked at my local public library in high school because libraries was something I was interested in high school and in college. So I kind of got a part-time job at my local library to kind of pursue that and see what the career would look like. So I worked there part-time while I was an undergrad, and I got another part-time job on campus as the office clerk for the English department. So in 421 Denny, I would work the front desk, and while students would turn in papers or copy materials for some of the English professors, both of those were just really formative for me. While I worked at the front desk of the English department, I became really close with the academic advisors for the English department and for English majors. We formed a close relationship. One of them, Ruth, helped me through the application process for grad school. So I got my master's in library science from Kent State. They're actually the only school in Ohio that has the MLIS. So I applied to Kent and a couple other schools. And like I said, one of the academic advisors, Ruth, she really helped me through the process. She would sit down with me for a couple hours every week and go through my resume, go through my personal statement, help me write drafts and things like that. So those two work experiences really helped form my experience. I was able to get a professional job at that local library when I graduated from grad school. That kind of launched me into the career I have today.
Yeah, Ruth Friedman, good. See, that's a perfect example of how those relationships you're building right now can help you down the road. So great story. Anyone else want to share?
I can talk a little. So I think a formative experience I had was just starting in research. I started working on research projects my sophomore year of undergrad. And I think, I just kept going on from there. I had my first project, which was I was tasked with rating videos of therapy sessions, watching people go through therapy and rating what therapists were doing. And it was super cool. And I loved it. And it just really, made me want to go deeper into research. And I think what helped me get into grad school as early as I did, because a lot of people take a couple years off in between undergrad and grad school for at least clinical psych. But I went right in, and I think I was helped by that because I just kept doing stuff. I just kept doing a lot of stuff. And I would just ask to do stuff. Like I worked on this project in the depression lab, which is where I work. I worked on this project for a year, and at the end of the year, I asked one of the grad students, I'm like, this project was great. I want to work on more projects. And they didn't really have anything lined up. So I just started working on an independent project with them. So yeah, I think just getting in there, doing a lot of stuff and asking to do stuff was vital. And I would have to imagine it's helpful to do whether you're doing a career in research or anything else.
Great. Yeah, that is definitely true. When you ask to take on more, the worst they can say is no. But when you take on more, you show that initiative and that determination, and you're learning. So great, fantastic. Anyone else?
I could jump in and speak to that importance of networking. Now, while I didn't get my position solely because of some activity I may have done on campus, my company president, my company operations manager, our IT manager, and one of our accounting folks are all OSU grads. And that, I think, helped. So to speak to and that really speaks to the importance of networking. I recall one spring break, I think this was probably sophomore into junior year, I spent the entire spring break networking with some big companies up in Cleveland and Northeast Ohio. And I met with, I think, 3 or 4 different folks the whole spring break. And the last person I met with was my now company president, for, at the time, was just an order entry job, which goes back to kind of what Mark said, where don't turn down anything that seems small or insignificant, because you never know what it could build up into. And I was just looking for a summer job at the time. And I think, this connection to Ohio State really made a difference, because anybody could essentially do what I'm doing. So I have a college grad do it, or at least at the time, almost graduate. And they, taking that chance because we had the OSU name, plus the fact that I was eager and willing to do anything and nothing was beneath me, and was just entering orders into the system. And then that following summer, I came back and I was doing their HR internship. And that's when I redid their handbook and I read through, all their policies. So to them, it was a no-brainer upon graduation that I had already basically known the insides of the company and how it operated. So again, it really speaks to the importance of, one, that networking. If that's the one piece of advice I would give during undergrad, is network. And then never turn your nose down on something that seems small, because you never know when it can grow big.
Excellent. And that's, again, another example of just the strength of the OSU network and alumni. And even just, it's really funny, you put your Ohio State graduate on your resume, and you better be prepared when that person in your interview says, oh, how about them Buckeyes? You know, they, even if they're not connected through academics, that, you know, Ohio State is out there in the world for sure. Anyone else? Anyone else have those, you know, that involvement here at OSU or experiences that kind of propelled you?
Yeah, I've got an experience I'd like to discuss, and it's similar to what Graham had talked about, doing some research. I was able to participate at Ohio State in the Denman Forum and presented some research I did through the Department of Anthropology. And it was undergraduate research, but I was interacting with graduate students and getting into the labs and using equipment like microscopes to look at. This one was looking at bones, actual bone fragments. And it's interesting that you wouldn't really connect that with automotive parts and pricing parts, but I did have an experience in a past job putting on a technical exhibition at Honda on their site. And that involved a lot of the similar things, having posters, being a presenter, interacting with, in that case, it was the customer and different engineers from the R&D facility at Honda walking through. And I could draw on a lot of that experience, and it's not a direct one-to-one relationship, but there was a lot of things that you can see the similarities, and I was grateful for that experience to draw on later, you know, a couple years down the line.
Yeah, so that's sort of that transferable skill, transferable knowledge for sure. Yeah, Michael, what about your experience there in your interview?
Yeah, so I shared this in the chat, but it was a funny story actually. The person who I interviewed with to join City Year, which is the organization that I'm involved with now, was somebody who I met through OSU. They were serving in some sort of academic, like higher education, professional position within the College of Social Work, I believe. And I just had one interview with them. It was probably like 30 minutes, just about some opportunities to volunteer or serve around Columbus. And that person, I hadn't seen them in over a year, but they ended up being the person that interviewed me for the organization that I'm involved with now. I said in my message that Ohio State is a big, big, big university, and it is an even bigger institution within Columbus and Central Ohio. So think about the ways that you can, you know, get to meet other people around Ohio State and in Columbus, and just see lots of different places, because you never know when it's going to come back and really be in your favor and come in handy. So just a quick personal experience with how that has, you know, led me to where I am today.
That's awesome. Rachel, how did you end up teaching abroad? How did that process happen for you?
Oh, that's a great question. That was a connection I made with a French professor. He was a professor that had sent several students to that program in the past. It was something I had wanted to study abroad as an undergraduate student, but I didn't have the time to fit it into my schedule with my degree plan because I was an honor student. So having that opportunity to live abroad, to earn a paycheck, and to be able to actually be immersed in the culture for a period of 8 months, that was something that stood out to me particularly. And also, I had an inclination that I might be interested in the field of education after graduation. So that was a really great way, since I had no prior teaching experience, to be able to kind of dip my feet in the water to see if maybe the professor or the teacher was the route that I had wanted to go. So that professor, yeah, just being in class and talking to my professors about my academic and career goals was something that led me down that path. And it was a phenomenal experience, and one that I often fall back on when I'm speaking in interviews or when I'm even talking to prospective students. So yeah, that's definitely something I would encourage you guys to consider if you're thinking about studying abroad, or even if you just have an inclination to get out there and experience new cultures and new things. It's a really formative experience, kind of like Allison was saying. I like that word, formative.
Great. See, you talk to your professors, you might end up teaching abroad, living in a different country. Great. Current students, anybody have any of those questions for our alumni panel? I'm just curious. Go ahead, Caitlin.
So like a lot of things are a lot of the same things I hear repeated are like form connections and relationships with professors, but that's something that is a lot harder to do in this time. Like this is my second semester and I've never met a professor face to face. So like, how do you like, is there any advice you have? You might not, because this is like such a unique problem that students today are facing, but are there any things you would advise us to do to stand out?
Good, very good question.
I can jump in, just throw my 2 cents in. So one thing that came to mind that I don't think we've touched on yet is informational interviews. So that is something I have reached out to colleagues in my profession, so higher ed. I've also reached out to folks in marketing, and I've also reached out to professors just to schedule an appointment to just chat about whatever that may be. Sometimes that's an assignment, sometimes that is to go over a paper, sometimes that's just to discuss career goals. So that's definitely something that I would encourage you to do, especially just in general. Ohio State's a huge school, so definitely don't be afraid to take that step and that initiative to reach out to your professors. It's a great way for them to get to know you. And I think they have a lot of valuable insights that they can pass along too. So that would be just something I'd reach out and throw in.
I agree. Going to office hours was something that I did. If I had a question or something I wanted to follow up on, it gets a little bit easier, a little less intimidating as you get further into a major. It can be intimidating if your instructor is teaching a class to 100 students. It might be hard for them to identify you at first, but as you get into major classes, like I was an English major, so we'd sometimes have 15 students in a course. So it was really a lot easier to build a relationship with that instructor and have conversations and things as I got more into my major classes.
Yeah, I think although it is a unique situation, you got the same sort of tools. I remember emailing a lot of different professors just saying, I want to set up an appointment. Met them in person, talk about career goals, different stuff like that. And I mean, the only thing that would be different is to be over Zoom, right? So it can feel a bit more uncomfortable to, write out a formal email, than just walking up to a professor. But yeah, I think the path to it wouldn't change much, at least if I did it again during a pandemic.
Yeah, and I'll add, I think in some ways, as we get more used to this technology, it might become easier in the future to connect with faculty if you can do it over Zoom and don't have to make that physical appointment. But again, it's just something I think that's ever evolving. So just don't be afraid to go put yourself out there, I would say. Any other questions?
I'll just add one more thing to that last point. Speaking of putting yourself out there, I know that a lot of folks might not end up in a career or in a position that was directly related to their academic major at Ohio State. So I myself, I still actually get emails from undergraduate student orgs that I was involved in. So, if there are organizations you're involved with that are having Zoom meetings or club get-togethers virtually, still attend those, take advantage of those, because you might meet someone in a club or a student organization that you end up working for, or maybe a mentor or somebody, that could become a great friend. So take advantage of those extracurricular activities too, because like I said, OSU is very big and there's a lot of pathways to career success that don't just come from your professor or somebody who, gave a lecture one day relating to an academic issue that you are interested in.
Yes, that's very true. So don't limit yourself just to faculty. So get to know your hall director, get to know your on-campus job supervisor, or the person that works at the front desk for your major. All of the people on campus, go see Allison in the libraries. All of the people on campus are resources, whether they are faculty or not. That's a very good point Michael made, is that, oftentimes you might have a major and then find yourself in a completely different career field. Did any of you envision yourselves where you are today when it comes to career, or, how did that path change for you, or what was that ideal career you had? Now you're where you are today. Anyone want to talk about that?
While this didn't exactly happen with me, I can tell you as an HR manager, seeing a dozen or so applications a week, that is everyone's story. Everyone's story is this zigzag career of, well, I thought I was going to do this, but now here I am. And again, I know this doesn't exactly apply to me, but I could speak on behalf of my company operations manager, studied marketing, totally unrelated to what he's doing, and he was an OSU grad. And my company president studied journalism, also at Ohio State, also totally unrelated to what he's doing. And now he owns and operates his own company. Both of those are OSU grads with that zigzag career path that did not necessarily start with what they were studying per se, and are obviously very successful in the world and have great careers. And but yeah, I could say that I see applications constantly, and there is really very seldom a straight linear path to this is what I want to do. Oh, look, now I'm doing it, right? There's something either happens here, or zigzags or dash or whatever it might be. So yeah, that's the importance of leveraging all those opportunities to lead to the next thing. So just my 2 cents there.
Yeah, so don't be scared or frustrated if you feel you have to follow one distinct path, I would say. Just curious, in your interview processes or, just professional life, did anyone ask you, what is this Humanities Scholars thing on your resume? Anyone have that experience? I'm just curious. No? That's okay. At least it was on there. I know you all had it on there, so that's good. Any other questions from current students?
I would just say this is all very reassuring. I feel like a lot of humanities majors, first of all, face a lot of discouragement for being a humanities major. Like, oh, you're not going to get a job, or you're going to get a job, but it's not going to pay very well. But obviously, all of you have found your paths to success. And also, I also feel a lot of pressure that whatever major because I'm undecided still, whatever I major I choose is that is strictly the path that I have to stay on. But obviously so many people just kind of stray from their field of study when they get get an actual job. So this has been very, like I said, very encouraging. And also I did wonder oh, should I put my Starbucks experience on my actual resume? Because it's something I have done in high school, or started in high school, which seems so long ago. But yeah, I definitely I think I learned some skills that can be useful in the future. So.
Grace, when you put that Starbucks on your resume, you're going to be in an interview and someone's going to say, oh my gosh, I just love the Frappuccino, whatever.
That's probably, that's every time I tell someone I work there, they're like, oh my God, this is my favorite drink.
And then you know what, when you leave that interview, that person's going to remember Grace because of that experience. So it's the weird, wacky things that you don't really predict that can help you get where you're going. Any other questions?
I'll throw one out there at the group. I'd like to know for anybody, like, if you've been a part of any professional development opportunities, and then maybe how did that help you in your role? Maybe kind of, we all go through different professional development. I think every industry has some sort of it, somewhere along the way. Sometimes it may be hidden, but sometimes it may just be right out there. But have you ever participated in any professional development? And then how did that help you in your role, or see things maybe from like a different perspective? Has anybody experienced that, or does anybody want to speak on that?
So I had an experience that kind of changed the trajectory of my career. I was working in public libraries. A couple issues related to copyright came up. So I asked my manager if I could take a professional development course to learn more about it so we could be better informed as librarians, and what that means in regards to copyright at a public library. I know users and things like that. So I took this training. It was about like a 4-week online course that my employer paid for, and that was really great. And then about 6 months later, there was a job at Ohio State called the copyright specialist position that came up, and I had that professional development experience. I had that training on my resume, which I really think helped me get that job and go from the public library to Ohio State.
And the best perk about that was that somebody paid for it. Yeah, so you didn't have to do that, and it helped you leverage your next position. So that's awesome. Anybody else take anything like that?
I actually have a few. So one that speaks to me that I participated in as an undergraduate. So Ben was actually involved in this. There was an LA trip that was for students who were interested in the field of the entertainment industry. And at the time when I was a junior-ish in college, I had an inkling that I might want to be a writer for television or for films. So I went with a group of about a dozen other students of various majors of various years. And we all participated in this really awesome professional development opportunity. We got to network with Ohio State alums in various roles and positions in the industry out in LA, which was awesome. Got to hear their stories, how they got to where they were. And that was a really formative experience. I got to get a better sense of what these folks did on the day-to-day. So yeah, that was another really cool experience that I got to do through Ohio State, completely paid for by Ohio State. So that was something I'd encourage you guys to look into. If you have an experience or you have an interest in a certain field, there are usually professional development opportunities available. And through my job, I've also participated in various conferences. My first week of employment, I was actually at a conference. It's called the Newcomers Conference, and it's for the Law School Admissions Council, the LSAC, if you guys are familiar with that group. So that is the legal entity. They administer the LSAT exam. They are essentially the entity that oversees all the ABA-approved law schools. So I got to network with a bunch of incoming new members to the law admissions field. So we kind of had a cohort. I'm still in contact with several members of this organization today. I touch base with them if I have questions about policy or admissions practices with other schools, because they're really great contacts. And I've also done several conferences networking with pre-law advisors, so at various undergraduate institutions. So again, these were opportunities that I got to do completely free, completely from my job. So getting to build my professional network as well as to gain insight into my field, which has been very helpful.
That's awesome. Nick, you went on an international trip, didn't you?
Yes, I did. In one of my past roles, I was able to go to Japan for 3 weeks and visit a lot of plant facilities. And actually, I had mentioned the exhibition that was held in Honda in the U.S. We went and saw the same sort of thing in Japan at Honda R&D in their facility north of Tokyo. So that was really amazing experience, and getting to interact with some of the Japanese expats who had previously worked in Ohio and then we're back in Japan and still keeping that connection and interacting with them on the weekends, being able to have a little cultural immersion and visit different areas and regions of Japan. And I mean, that's just fantastic experience there. But being able to work and be in an office, and I'm what, like 5'9", and they had a desk that I felt pretty cramped at, but it was just a really interesting situation and not something I would have imagined I'd have that opportunity. So it was really incredible to be able to go over there and just interact and have that experience.
Great. Yeah, when your employer says, do you want to go to Japan? You should say yes.
Absolutely.
All right, well, I got one more, and if students don't have a lot of other ones, or Ben, if you don't have any, I'd like to just kind of go around the horn and just go maybe like last parting shots, but I'd like to know what is the most rewarding aspect of your job. I'd like for the students to kind of hear like what you love the most about your job. So yeah, so we can just fire it around. I don't have any order I want to go in, but so feel free to chime in, but I'd love to just hear kind of where you guys are at on that. Somebody, Andrew, let's lead it off.
Say, nobody, as HR, nobody loving their jobs was immediately horrifying to me. So just throwing that out there to everybody that I'm worried about you. So in my position, again, it's traditional HR. It's the HR generalist. So I do everything from hiring, recruiting, performance management, training development, all of that, and firing, sadly. The thing that I love most is it's firing. No, I'm just kidding. The thing that I love most is the fact that I can help people grow in their careers. I just had an interview yesterday with somebody who had bounced around. They're in their, I don't know, mid to late 20s, I think, self-disclosed. I didn't ask and violate the law, just to clarify. And they had this career path that just bounced around to all sorts of different jobs. And this is a great case where I can see, their question is this a position I can grow into? And as HR, I love the fact that I can help someone, first of all, find the right fit for them, and then take that and then help them grow and develop in their job into either other positions, or, whether it's a lateral move or a, upward move, and just really see them flourish and enjoy their job. As HR, right, in all this, as HR, my job is to make sure people are happy and enjoying their job. Yes, obviously, it's all those other technical things of HR that you might think of, or, it's the thought police, whatever, the stereotypical HR stuff. But really, it's a lot more about, are you happy in your job? Do you have what you need? What can I do to get you there, give you that thing? So I find that incredibly rewarding, just to see people kind of, grow and change in their careers. So yeah. So yes, I do enjoy my job. I hope the rest of you like yours. Anyway, someone else go.
Yes, I was trying to be patient, but Andrew, since you kind of threw down the gauntlet there, yeah, so I love what I do. I'm really sad that I can't do it again next year because it's only a 2-year program. But there's a lot of things I get joy from. Working with students is definitely a big one. Like no matter what kind of day I'm having, I work in elementary school, and so I get to be around a lot of energy, but also a lot of joy. And like I said, regardless of how I'm feeling, you really get lifted up by just being in a school and working with young people. I can't give as many hugs as I did last year, but it's still really great to just be in a classroom space with students. I work in a 5th grade class, and like I said, they just make it very joyful to be in service to them, to watch them mature year on year, and to see them grow throughout the course of 1 year. And another thing I would throw in is one thing I've really found a lot of joy in this year is the ability to be creative through my professional life. I've had a few chances on the different responsibilities and councils and things that I sit on to kind of create initiatives and things for core members within my organization. And I've just really gotten a lot of enjoyment out of being creative for different projects and everything from little details like flyers to big picture ideas of how to plan school-wide events and things. And it's just been really enjoyable to look at how you can sort of be creative and expressive on something that you're passionate about through your job, quote unquote. And that's something, along with just working with students every day, that has really given me a lot to be thankful for over the past year, and really makes me sad that I can't do it again next year.
Yeah, I can definitely chime in here. And I think to everyone's point about the zigzag and maybe having different interests as you're in college, I think for me, working in sales and in a manufacturing environment, what's great is I get to interact with groups in different departments. And sometimes that's to resolve an issue or a customer request, but it's great just to be able to go and learn from a purchasing department or a tooling division, or actually get to go and visit manufacturing facilities and interact with the people at those facilities to learn their processes better so that you can then present detail to the customer. So I think what's great is you get to kind of live between worlds, so to speak. So you get to interact with people internally, also at the customer, and have a lot of different hats from time to time. So that's really enjoyable, and you get to continue learning and seeing new things, which is a lot of fun.
In my role at OD, I get to work directly with instructors who are developing online courses with for their students. So I really enjoy being able to work with instructors and integrate like library skills and make sure there's avenues for student success in those courses. And I really enjoy that. I didn't know this aspect of librarianship was possible when I was in grad school or even in the beginning of my career. I've had the ability to kind of grow my own position in a unique path. And I just really love being able to work with instructors. Again, reiterating those library skills for students.
I'd say my favorite part of my job, which I do love, Andrew, is being able to put my own stamp on something. Because in research, there is a lot of unstructured time. You could choose to do a lot of different things, and that can be kind of overwhelming for some people, but it doesn't tend to bother me at all. I like to figure out how to make things go as efficiently as possible. Like, I see clients in therapy, for example, so I really enjoy thinking about how I can best help people, how I can most efficiently help people across the board. And then I also kind of just enjoy the artistry that can come from your work. And this is kind of related to a point I think is important when you're thinking about a career, is to be well-rounded. And that's to have extracurriculars, to have hobbies, and not just because it will keep you sane and it will help you have a meaningful life, but that it can also help you in your career. Like, for example, I started going to an open mic poetry reading a couple of years ago. And I still go every week. It's on Zoom now. And it really taught me how you can write something very short and have it still be very meaningful, have a lot of impact. And this is in stark contrast to research papers. If you've ever read a research paper, you know it is very difficult to understand. So working with poetry just inspired me to, in my career, write simply, to kind of buck the trend of writing things as complicated as possible. So yeah, just in general, put my stamp on things and finding the artistry in something that people don't typically think of as something that's, creative.
And I'm going to be reiterating a lot of what everyone else said. So I love the variety of my job as well. So from, I would say probably September till November, I am traveling, which I really enjoy. It's something I really enjoyed about being abroad in France, was being able to see new cities and take in new sights and meet new people. So that's a part of my job that I enjoy. For the rest of the year, I host visitors, which is very fun. I get to meet a lot of the students that end up actually matriculating to the college, so actually enrolling as students. So then getting to see them as they come in through the school, take classes, and they'll stop by sometimes. And that's very rewarding to see them doing well in their academics and taking full advantage of what the law school has to offer. So that's something I really enjoy. And I also really enjoy that I also get to do things outside of admissions. So I get a little bit of creative flexibility as well, because I am someone who really loved writing. So I get to write a lot of the marketing and communications materials as well for prospective students, admits, for applicants, pretty much in any kind of facet. And I've gotten to work with websites and website design and email design, formatting, all kinds of things. So because of my interest in another area, I've gotten to work with our director of law communications, because we're such a small school, and everyone here is pretty much a jack of all trades. We all wear different hats depending on the day. So very much, yeah, reiterating a lot of what Michael and Nick said, but yeah.
Excellent. Well, I just want to say thank you to all of you for joining us today. It's reassuring to see that humanities scholars go and become rock stars all over the spectrum. So keep up the good work. And again, thank you for spending some time. A big virtual round of applause for all of you for joining us today. Let's see. Oh yeah, if students, if you want to drop your name in the your email number in the chat for Mark, that'd be great. But again, once again, thank you to all of our panelists and alumni. It's really good to see you all, and glad that you are all doing well. I'll turn it back over to Mark to kind of wrap things up.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. Appreciate everybody stopping in today, students and alumni alike. Thank you so much for helping out. A lot of feedback from alumni who want to be a part of the event. So thank you all for jumping in. In the chat, I just dropped the Readiness Competencies link. Takes you to our website. So there's a full menu of items to look at on the right-hand side. Feel free just to buzz around. If you're looking for something to maybe get some other tips, the guides and tip sheet has a plethora of information inside of there. So if you're looking for help with resumes, cover letters, some other networking tips, please feel free to jump in there. But that is all I have for tonight. Again, thank you to the alumni panelists for stopping in, and for everybody for showing up. And we'll see you again some other time. It looks like some other alumni are dropping their names and email addresses in there. So if the students maybe want to jot those down really quick here, maybe you can reach out to them. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, networking. You got a bunch of people that you can use right here that are dropping their names in the chat box. So I would maybe write those down so we can continue on this journey of networking, because it really does help out. If I think about all my jobs I've really had, like I use networking, I leverage networking. So these are some good folks that are in similar shoes. They walk the same mile in the same shoes as you, so they'd be willing to help out, I'm sure. And if you need anything from me, please feel free to reach out. If you didn't catch somebody's email before we wrap everything up, then that's okay. Just let me know, and I will get you that information.